Hey folks, this is Strong Games and welcome to Total War Warhammer 3. Today we're looking at the Legion of Chaos and kind of doing a bit of a getting started guide for them. One of the things about the Legion of Chaos is you actually get to name your main lord, so that's kind of an interesting little piece there. This faction is quite interesting because they have access to basically every other major um, factions unit. So you get Khorne, you get Slaanesh, you get Nurgle, and you get Tzeentch. And you can access units from different factions. Right off the bat, you actually start with no settlement, so you're just kind of here by yourself. Um, and one of the things that you want to kind of focus on in this campaign is you'll see a bunch of different glory tabs up here. Earning glory is really important for this faction, and we'll go through why that is. Now, to start off, we'll just go to take a look at the Lord. You only really get this undivided trait, and so you get this ability to customize your Lord through demonic gifts, and then you get access to different gifts from being different kind of faction or raising different faction glory. So Khorne or Nurgle, Slaanesh, Tzeentch, Chaos Undivided, they all kind of give different things. So one thing here you'll notice is that you actually can customize different pieces of this Lord, and we'll take a look at what that actually looks like. So if we go here, this is the Demonic Glory tab, and basically as you earn glory, you unlock the ability to access different pieces of this. So if you earn lots of undivided glory, you'll slowly fill this bar up. If you earn lots of Khorne glory, you basically unlock the ability to add additional corruption. You unlock better units. You access more pieces, and it's the same for all of the other factions. So earning kind of a good balance of these is really good because a lot of these are quite powerful bonuses, and having a good mix of units with this faction can be really helpful because you fight a lot of different types of factions in this campaign. Now, one other option that you have is instead of trying to, build up a whole bunch of different levels of glory, is just to purely focus on a single one. Good candidates for this are the Nurgle faction and the Slaanesh faction, and it's because of the types of corruption and the bonus that the corruption gives you. Nurgle gives you a bonus to growth, and Slaanesh gives you a bonus to income. Khorne and Tzeentch give bonuses too, but they're not quite as good in the early game as these other two. And so that's kind of the demonic glory mechanic. If we look here, this area, so you can see Nurgle corruption gives additional growth, and they all of the different types of corruption enable attrition. And so if you have a look at the starting army, you have just a good mix of units from the different factions. These units are particularly good to start with. The Seekers, as well as the Daemonettes are good. The Bloodletters aren't bad either. So there are some pretty good units in this army to start with. I tend to focus on taking the Forest of Decay here most of the time. Now, I would actually fight this battle manually normally because we can do a lot better than a Pyrrhic victory here, but we'll do that just to go along. And then you get different options, so you can either raise a settlement, you can sack the settlement, or you can start to occupy the settlement, which gives you different levels of glory, and it gives you access to certain buildings depending on the type that you get. So one of the things that this faction struggles with a lot, especially in the early game, is money. So I want to build up some Slaanesh corruption, but I also want to keep the Nurgle corruption going. And this area is already very corrupted by Nurgle, so I'm actually going to keep it corrupted by Nurgle because I get those bonuses right away. So then you can go into your buildings. You can actually build this, gives you some additional glory. Corruption reduces your kind of recruitment cost for Nurgle units. but there's a building in here that is quite strong, especially in the early game, which gives you a decent amount of extra glory as well as extra corruption. So I tend to often build this building regardless of what I select. So I've just picked, you know, the Nurgle faction here to start with. So the other thing that's interesting about this faction is that they have a very different lord tree for your legendary lord. So one of the things that you can do is you should actually go and have a look through all of these different options here. Reducing upkeep for different types of units is really good. So if you decide to like really go heavy into Khorne, then hammering down this tree is really good. I pretty much always max this out first because the glory mechanic again is tied to all of the demonic glory, which upgrades your lord. So it's pretty important to get that. Now, one of the things for this with this faction specifically is that you start off at war with these guys, the Septic Claw, and this is a Nurgle faction. These guys are quite weak to start with, which is good. You want to beat up on them first and kind of secure this first province. But if we take a look at other factions that are in the area, Wintertooth is a faction that they're actually down in this area. They're quite strong to start with. There is another faction in this area that's quite dangerous, which is the Malice Darkblades faction of Dark Elves, which kind of comes from over here. You'll see them probably in another turn or two. And in terms of victory conditions for this group, this is ascend in service to any Chaos God or as an undivided champion of all. That's done through raising your glory. So as you get more and more glory, basically that's how you ascend to serve the Chaos Gods. And then you're just purely looking to occupy, loot, raise, sack different settlements, which is great. Now the one thing that's a little bit odd about this one is that the long campaign victory is about removing these factions. Now this takes a long time for this faction because of the fact that these are distributed all over the map. So if I go over here, there's a faction here, there's another one over this direction, another one that's relatively close there, but you can see they're kind of in opposite directions. There's one here, and then the last one, the Legion of the Gore Queen, is like quite a ways over this direction. So you've kind of got to expand along the top of the map mostly. That's kind of a good way to achieve the long campaign victories, just to stay on this side and just completely expand in both directions. So that's kind of a good place to start your, or at least make your plans to do things. So here I selected Nurgle. So if you select different factions here, you would actually get, if I'd pick Khorne, I would get access to Marauders of Khorne. Different units become accessible depending on what you dedicate the settlements that you conquer towards. So there's quite a bit of strategy for this faction, but if we just advance the turn here, we'll get to take a little bit of a look at some of the other groups that are in the area. You're surrounded by quite a few Tzeentch factions. There we see Malice's faction show up. Now, if I go back to that diplomacy tab, you can look at the strength ranking for a lot of these, and Malice's faction is extremely strong to start with. They tend to be a very poor choice for us to mess with off the bat, but if you have the opportunity and you are able to kill their Black Arc, it is a really good thing to do because Black Arcs are really, really annoying to deal with. So I want to come down this way. Now there's a couple options here. You can go over here or this way. I tend to come over to this one just because this is doesn't have any army in it, and usually you can see where this guy gets to. We can kind of come down this direction and you can go right into their area. I don't want to quite do that. I want to go down just a little ways just so I can train a few more guys. The campaign for this faction is quite a slow start, honestly. Um, and you want to do that anyways, because you want to build up the levels of corruption. You've got to kind of keep your army together. If you fight these battles manually too, you tend to do better generally off the bat. But if we go here, you can see Malice's faction is right at the almost right at the top. They're in the top 5. So messing with them is probably a bad choice to start with. We are substantially weaker than they are, and they will come and murder us if we mess with them. And the thing with this game is, as soon as you're a little bit weak, you tend to get picked on by other factions. And so really there's not a lot to do at the beginning of this campaign. You just want to kind of get set up. The longer term plan involves continuing to build glory. You want to continue to get in fights with this guy, because basically the more fights you get in, the faster you'll level up, the more glory you'll gain. And you know, if you pick this top one, this is where you get most of your faction bonuses. Things like ability to move a little bit further, you get increased relations, control, growth, Chaos Undivided, and then each of these is dedicated to a different faction. So there, you can kind of pick whichever one you want that fits the playstyle that you like to play. And with that, that's kind of all I've got for this one. If you like the content, feel free to leave a comment, like the video, subscribe to the channel for more in the future. Thanks for watching.